With crypto and DLTs specifically in mind, I don't really understand the concept of rebuilding trust.
Founders, my goodness, the founders served in the United States Air Force. They have served the country. So if you don't trust them as founders, who are you going to trust? And so I want to say that very, very strongly. With these scandals that occurred, there was no really governance. And this is why Hedera and its ecosystem are so critical.
Is there a company that you have in mind, or an organization, or a house of academia, or whatever it might be, that you would like to see as a governing council member that we don't currently have? If you, personally, I mean, you personally?
Personally, I would love to have...
Hi, I'm Max Walker&Williams, and I've got another great interview for you here. I have the pleasure of being with Monique Morrow. Monique is an independent governing council member. Is that right? Is that the right way to describe your position?
No, I'm actually an independent director on its board.
On the board?
Right. So I'm not a council member, but an independent director. And so what that means is I'm sort of the big elephant in the room.
Right, okay. What does that mean? What do you mean by that?
Well, so that means, we have council members, we have board members who are council members. However, with this, we have to think that there is a trend these days to think about having independent directors in the industry. And what it means is also that you can challenge one another and that you don't have what could appear as a conflict of interest. That's not to say that there is a conflict of interest, but you just it is kind of a fine line that we all walk. And so with that level of independence, there's a lot more responsibility too, because you have to work with your colleagues on the board and you have to work with your colleagues in the council to gain trust, even more so. So that's what I do.
I can't actually think, and I mean this sincerely, having seen you in action, I can't think of anyone better for the role, because you seem to me to be a very straightforward, matter-of-fact person who's willing to listen and engage, but also give your opinion on matters. And I think a lot of the community members in the Hadera ecosystem, at least, will know you as an excellent moderator, because you do a lot of moderation for the panels. Is that fair to say?
I've done at least, this would be my second moderation for, we had Hadera, but it was also Aberdeen. We did that in London.
Yes.
And that where Aberdeen was actually hosting. And so it's not the key function, but for me, it's also about how do you amplify the message together? The message each council member has a message to send out, and to do it in a way that is very natural, and also in a way that people who are listening are going to come knocking on your door and saying, "I want to know more of that." In the process of doing that, it means also gaining their trust, right? And it means that you have some level of a priori working with a function or a relationship with them, and so on. So this was actually my second panel that had anything to do with WEF. Not with WEF, but rather with Hadera.
Hadera. And talking of WEF, you're a bit of a veteran. This is your fourth, is that right? This is your fourth
It is.
How have you seen the World Economic Forum change? Has it changed? And if so, how has it changed over those 4 years?
I think it's always going to evolve, whether you're going to have emphasis in politics or emphasis in certain levels of technology. When I first came, there was all this talk about blockchain, and there was all this talk about crypto that was happening out there in so many events. Also with the governments, how they were looking at a picture of what was happening 4 years ago from today. So each one has been a different conversation. Today is a little more concerning because you have to look at macroeconomics. You have to look at macro-political issues overall, why we have trust. Some people will call it resilience. And especially if you're looking at cybersecurity, you're looking at issues around countries and so on. But what we're finding is that technology, so the technologies, whether now it's AI is everywhere. One time was DLT, distributed ledger technologies everywhere. So now you're finding out that they're not exclusive. They come together.
You're absolutely right there, and there's been a lot of talk this year about, particularly in the crypto space at the WEF and at the larger sort of ecosystem, about rebuilding trust. Mm-hmm. With crypto and DLTs specifically in mind, I don't really understand the concept of rebuilding trust as much as having people understand that it's a technology and not just the negative stuff that we've seen of recent years, FTX and that sort of thing. Would you agree with that?
I do agree. And I think, so this is really, really important. So, and this is why Hedera and its ecosystem are so critical, because it's all around the governance that you put there, and you have there, and so it's rebuilding trust. It's actually looking at how you set upon what is your governance model. With these scandals that occurred, there was no really governance. There was just characters actually doing things that they really were not, felt that they were not responsible for, yet they were talking to the politicians and so on and so forth, and trying to gain their trust. And so what happened as a result is that we had a very strong pivot to, this is bad, this is evil, particularly that we were seeing in some governments, particularly in the United States or other countries. And so what we have to do is bring it to the middle of how we have this compromise, that it's not evil, that it is, let's face it, the cat is out of the box. It is here. So when people talk about, we all have to play together. So it's the power of the and. So you may have banking structures, you may have, your bank is your mobile wallet, or you have different types of wallets and identity. So it's going to give more responsibility to the citizen. So I'll put it at that level. You have also responsibility at the enterprise and at the government level. So we have to play together. I think that's more important, and we have to have that transparency, some level of transparency. So I think that's going to be the opportunity, is to get it to the middle, get it to the fact that these were all scandals. They had no governance. They didn't know what they really, everything was a party. And now we haven't. I believe strongly that we're working back to the positive end here for the ecosystem of crypto. Yeah,
and I think talking about Hadera specifically, this rebuilding trust sort of motif that's going around, I think it's not fair or correct for Hadera, because as far as I'm concerned, Hadera's got no trust to rebuild. For me, the message from a Hadera point of view should be trust the right people. Because Hedera's always been, in my mind, one of the adults in the room, if you like, and it's I think as the industry matures and people get a better understanding of this is a technology, it's not going anywhere, and actually it can be utilized for so much, and it can do so much better, but it can also do so much that other technologies physically can't facilitate. That I think that people are finally waking up to the fact that there is value in this, intrinsic value in this technology, and now they're looking around for the right one to pick. That's Hedera's open for business.
That's you have it. You've hit it right, Max. The Hedera has always been about trust. It has been. It's not been rebuilding trust, as the conversations in WEF we're having in WEF overall. But we've always been there. And if you look at the founders, my goodness, the founders served in the United States Air Force. They have served the country. So if you don't trust them as founders, who are you going to trust? And so I want to say that very, very strongly. And so I think this is the Hadera has always been there, but it is going to be it's selective of what membership looks like, and it's selective of who the Web3 players are and how they're going to look, etc. Because we have to think about the inclusive model overall.
Yeah, absolutely. How then does Hadera balance the appealing to institutions and the likes of the attendees of the World Economic Forum, but also at the same time appeal to and not alienate grassroots developers? It's a very hard balance, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So we have an open source developer community.
Yes.
And this is very important. Open source is a very key strategy within Hedera, and we have the Hedera, and have an open source manager or leader. So fostering community is extremely important, extremely pivotal. So it's not one over the other. It has to be, as you're alluding to at the end. And so there's the enterprises, right? So, tend to be that, but it's always about making sure the community is always engaged, right? And have input also to, the developers, or this is about developers too, and so things do not happen in a vacuum. So it's what Hedera is doing best, in my opinion, as an observer.
I think so too, and I think that time is very much, I've been saying this quite a bit, and I've been saying this for a couple of years, that time is on Hedera's side.
Yes, it is.
And time is a very powerful ally indeed.
It is.
Have you met any particularly interesting people, or with the panel we've just had? It was absolutely fantastic. Could you just touch on that a little bit, because it was about AI, wasn't it, and governance?
It was AI and DLT, and we had a tremendous amount of in the intersection of the future of money. So you had wonderful leaders in that panel who came together. Whether it was David Schreier from AI, from Imperial College, we had Jamal from who came in. Yeah. And just rocked the house.
He absolutely did.
From Boeing, and building systems, involved in systems of building in terms of drones and themselves, but is very much bold on, and Boeing is a council member. Yeah. On this intersectionality of DLT and AI and trust. Gurvinder used to run the IBM blockchain practice. Cannot say enough about Lehman. And Jonathan. I mean, so you had Jonathan Doughton. So you had all of these folks really kind of talking about and the future of money, which is we're now in a journey, and AI. They're coming together. There are things that there's a vision that we can see where. Lehman talked about, these assistants that are very, very, I mean, you can get down to very technical terms here, or technical framing. But what I loved about it was the power of the conversation, agree to disagree, move it to something that's going to be really, where people have to come away thinking. And then having Jonathan from Equity Labs, talk and then present what he's doing in terms of, the whole bringing it together so people can see it, the visual, right?
Yeah, that was amazing.
That was amazing. So there were folks who were policymakers with governments in the room. There were folks who were, very intensely interested in the technology. There were folks who were just, they were amazed while they're parsing through the conversation, and you were too, I was too, and when he brought it together and said, this is the power that you see, this is the visualization, and it's here today, and we're working with Hadera. I mean, what more how wonderful that can be. And one of the colleagues in the room who was in the first panel, I mean, she was thinking about Shelley Brunswick, was actually talking about, wow, what this could do for space. Yeah.
You can see light bulbs going off.
You can see light bulbs going off. And so when I am a visual person, when I see that, bringing it about what we can do to help governments, because there were some little jabs to the governments, but you have to bring them on a journey. You cannot ignore them. So that's the whole thing. And so, I have to say, amazed and learned a lot and thank the team and yourself also, Max.
Thank you.
Yourself also is important because you have the power of the narrative, and also the Hedera marketing team and the policy team, Nomini and team, to look at how we can actually work together to get that message out and to bring in, and this is very important, inclusion from various different thoughts, inclusion of what we can see overall, and people felt that they were included in the conversation, and that something is successful when they're continuing talking about it after the event.
That's the thing, isn't it? When the meal ends, I've been to a lot of these types of events, but this is a very special one, and particularly the ones that we've both been at, because you're right, people are like sort of half leaving their food to just get up and start just forming groups, chatting and going from group to group, and and these are all the people. There's a lot of the decision makers in the room as well.
They were.
So actually, it's tangible, because it's not just hot air talk, nice ideas. It's two people, one with a great idea and one with a potential customer who has the infrastructure to take that and turn it into a product or an end use case.
Absolutely. It's the use cases that drive the opportunity. It's the use cases. Imagine whether it's sustainability and what that would look like. Because this is the language that we speak today. How do we care about caring about the environment? Is the use cases that drive it. How do you deal with security? How do you more security? More so. How do we make it more robust than we have? Or could we make it more robust? We're always going to challenge ourselves. And this is important. We always will challenge ourselves. And we have to. And so, and that's the great thing. And then, of course, looking at what I loved what Lehman said, it was, you have this power of AI and it can help you code and et cetera, but watch out what you're putting in and getting out. Yeah. And you can have something that is really not good and not positive. So how do you manage that? And so these only create opportunities. And so for the council members, we see that there's going to be more and more opportunities to look at. Help us. Let's run something. Let's look at how we could create. Maybe us looking at what solutions can be, how we build solutions, working with the developer community, the community overall. And make sure that assure that we're constantly in a level of communications with one another and looking at being ahead of the curve. And being ahead of the curve, I call it the head of the curve. We've always been somewhat, but constantly doing that.
Yeah.
It's and the other thing I think that's interesting is how the ecosystem, but also the ecosystem of players in this space can really play together. There's enough sand playground here to play together. So.
Yeah, and actually, I don't know if you've seen yet, but I was fortunate enough to have a chat with Brad from Ripple, Brad Garlinghouse and Lehman, and it was so great to see two people that could easily be termed competitors saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Because we often see individuals saying it, but see two come together and say, and this is why. And the analogy I came up with was there may be competition in the future, but we've got to build the stadium before we can have the match.
I love that.
And at the moment, we've got to build the stadium
before you can have the match, and that's true. You got to. There's a level of playing together at some point in time, and something quite candidly, when I learned when I was at Cisco is sort of the way you learn with John Chambers. He wrote a book called Connecting the Dots. I think it's Connecting the Dots. If you ever want to know how Cisco plays and they continue, is how they are that way, and you have to kind of look at play together. Sometimes you have to say, look, we're going to just give the code of this away. But in the spirit that I trust you as a leader, we can do some work together, and then look at how that will, sometimes it's risks. You take those risks, but you do have to, that analogy that you just made is really key. And with that, at some point, who knows what it'll look like. But we will continue.
Is there a company that you have in mind, or an organisation, or a house of academia, or whatever it might be, that you would like to see as a governing council member that we don't currently have? If you personally, you personally.
Personally, I would love to have Cisco.
Yeah.
I would love to have Cisco. They have what it takes to be a great council member, to bring along wonderful use cases, particularly in the area of AI and cybersecurity being very key for them. And then looking at and DLT, we can talk. DLT is underplay, right? So to look at how we could actually come together. They are pioneers in what has been the internet and the infrastructure, and so they've moved on to cloud and so on. I think they are, their customers are some of the customers are on the council or partners. I think they would be a magnificent, as an enterprise, for the enterprise perspective, great council.
I completely agree. Lastly, I'm moderating a panel later with Lehman on the panel. Have you got any tips for me?
Oh no, you're doing all the great. I mean, for Lehman, it's always I don't know the subject, but
Governance. Yeah, it's Lehman and a couple of mathematicians. So
I think it's more about bringing it down to, what it looks like now, but what can we do better?
Yeah.
And what could that future, so if you were to invent the future hat on, what we could do better, you will spark something within these leaders.
What should it look like and how do we get there?
How do we get there? Yeah.
Okay,
and
perfect.
how do we get there?
Monique,
the most
thank you
important.
so much for your time.
You're
It's been
very
absolutely
nice.
fantastic talking to you. There you go, guys. Another fantastic interview. I think it's so interesting here, and I'm very fortunate to be here. I hope you're enjoying it too. I'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.